I don't think it's a stretch to say that I did not go about learning how to write musical theater in the easiest of ways. It was a long and grueling process, but there are a lot more tools available today than there were back when I was learning to write. So, if I were to go through that process again from the beginning in today's world, here's how I'd do it. I started with trying to do a little research and see what kind of information I could find, which is still the route I would take, but there are a few key differences now. I was on a small college campus with limited resources, but our library had a pretty good reach throughout the university system, so books it was. There were even fewer books back then than there are now, but I did find enough information to begin my journey. If you'd like some book recommendations, I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, I'm dating myself a little bit here, but when I was starting out, the internet was not nearly as useful for research as it is now, and YouTube was barely even in existence. So there are some definite advantages to doing this research now and finding resources other than books. Though I will admit, there still aren't a ton of resources out there. This YouTube channel is clearly trying to help fill some of that void, and you can take a step right now by hitting the like button and subscribing. That was shameless. Thanks! In terms of musical theater composition specifically, I didn't have a lot to go off of at the time, and honestly there still aren't a ton of resources out there on this topic, but I did begin to sit down and look at, play, dissect, and analyze musical scores on my own, which was a really good start. Doing that was super helpful to learn some of the most commonly used tropes and ideas in musical theater, and I was then able to take some of the things that I was learning into my composition and orchestration classes and experiment a little bit, and I was very lucky that my professors let me do it. Today, however, I think you can basically go through the same process, just more specific to musical theater. There may not be a lot of classes out there that teach musical theater composition and writing, but the BMI workshop and my musical theater writing collective course are both great places to learn these skills more specifically toward musical theater. The next thing I did was take a piece of advice that Oscar Hammersetin had given to a young Stephen Sondheim, which was to write 3 musical adaptations before trying his hand at writing his first original musical. The first of these adaptations was to take a musical that Sondheim admired and to try to musicalize it, and I thought, that sounds like a great first step, why don't I try it out? For my experiment, I took A Streetcar Named Desire, which already lives in a heightened and dramatic world, and adapted it into a musicalized version of the story. Now, I certainly did not turn this into a musicale, but I further heightened the most dramatic character and plot moments with sound, attempting to take the dialogue and turn those into lyrics. I'm not gonna lie, if you're starting from square one, this is an excellent exercise to undertake. Perhaps you don't need to adapt a full musical, a portion will do, but the amount that I learned about how book, music, and lyric can intertwine and play off of one another through doing this crazy little adaptation just completely blew my mind. And on top of that, I learned that I can indeed write. I would highly recommend getting yourself into a feedback process, particularly a good feedback process like the one that we use in the Musical Theater Writing Collective course, as early as possible. Musical theater writing thrives on feedback and rewriting, and it was a very happy accident on my part that I did this early on. And the biggest thing that I would change if I were to start over would be to write more. I made the rookie mistake that so many early writers make. I wrote a couple of things and determined that I could not write or call myself a writer until those couple of things were as good as they could possibly be made. They were gonna work! This was wrong. If you write something, you're a writer. Congrats! And honestly, the first couple of things that you write are probably not going to be good enough to even become your best work. The best thing you can do early on is to write as much as possible in as many different styles and genres as possible and with as many people as possible, collaborators and peers. You will learn so much just by doing. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't rewrite any of your early material. You absolutely should. Most writing happens in the rewriting anyway, but I wouldn't focus on your first 1, 2, or even 3 projects as being the big be-all, end-all pieces that deserve all of your time and focus. Instead, keep them around and work on them if they have promise while you write other projects and explore other things. And if those early ones don't have promise, let them go. There is no shame in having a trunk full of songs that just didn't end up going anywhere. It's actually a beautiful reminder of where you've been and how far you've come. Of course, none of this will make any difference if you don't at least understand the basics of what makes musical theater the magical genre that it is, and you can learn that by clicking here next. Otherwise, thank you all for being here with me today, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers!